Live Fit Podcast, episode 50, with my guest, Steve Mukensnabl.
You can't just focus on fitness. You can't just focus on nutrition or just having a good, positive mental attitude. You really have to blend those three areas to develop the athlete, because it's kind of like swimming upstream. If you're just working on fitness but you don't have your nutrition in order, you're not going to have the results that you want. I think people are too worried about targeting specific symptoms, counting calories. They hear that fat's bad, so they eliminate fat. They hear sugar's bad, so they eliminate sugar. And they're not really focusing on the big picture, which is what physical state are we in? Are we in a sympathetic state or a parasympathetic state? Good nutrition cannot trump emotional issues, emotional stress. No. And the worst thing to do is to suddenly say, okay, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to lose as much, I'm going to eat minimal, and I'm going to exercise as much as I can. Well, you're just forcing that sympathetic state again.
You're listening to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson. Here, we'll talk about all things related to good health, fitness, food, fat loss, and the mind-body connection.
Yes, it is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate your ear. This is episode 50. Yeah, 50 episodes. Amazing. I cannot wait to reach number 100. This is my first milestone at 50, and I'm going for 50 more. Are you with me? Today, I'll be speaking with Steve Mukensnabl. He is the nutrition expert at Horizon Sports. He's going to tell us his philosophy on eating. It involves stress, sugar, cravings, rest, and what good nutrition really is. He's also going to tell us why you should not deny yourself junk food. But first, I have some health tips, tricks, and hacks. I'd like to give you 6 ways to improve your adherence to your exercise and nutrition plan, no matter what that plan might be. Number 1, keep a food journal. That's right. It's a pain in the butt. It's super tedious, but it's also super helpful. Log everything you eat for 3 consecutive days. One of those should be a weekend day. Do this once a month, even if you think you're doing great. I do it every now and then. I do it every month or two. I've been doing it for a long time, so I have a pretty good idea of what I'm eating, but sometimes I am not sure if I've drifted too far off, and it happens really slowly, really gradually. So if you keep a food journal every now and then just to sort of check yourself and to see what you're eating, when you see it written down and you see what it adds up to, it really can help bring you back on the right track. It's really easy to veer and to fade off and, just this one time I'll have some French fries. Just this one time I'll have a little bit of something else or a little bit more than I'm used to eating. Well, that is okay if it is just this one time, but so often that sort of snowballs into something else. So as a way of bringing yourself back into focus, or maybe just to check to see if you're in focus, keep a food journal. 3 days, once a month. Number 2, be realistic. Avoid extremes, okay? Your body likes Goldilocks, just the right amount. Not too much, not too little. Think of that when you're exercising and when you're eating and with the things you eat. So all things in moderation, in other words, even moderation. Every now and then, it's good to binge and have a total pig out fest of something that you really, really enjoy once in a while. Not even once a month, less than that. So when you're being realistic, understand that you have certain limitations in your life. You have work, you have kids maybe, you have certain pressures pulling you in one direction or another. So don't say that you're going to exercise for an hour every single day at the gym after work. It's not going to work out that way. Something is going to get in your way. And yes, you can do that as your main workout, but have some alternatives that are not quite that rigid. Have a workout at home you can do. And as far as eating goes, you might not always be able to eat lunch at 12 o'clock noon, and you might not always be able to eat that kale salad you really love. So be realistic on what you can and cannot do. If you travel, you're going to be all thrown off. So think in advance what you're going to be able to do realistically and be okay with that. Number 3, assess your environment. Is there junk food in your house, at work, or in other places where you spend a lot of time? Get it out of there. You may not have control at work, but I would bet you do at home. Listen, I know the other people in the house like ice cream and cookies and chips and all that other crap that you really shouldn't be eating for good health. But let me tell you, if it's not good for you, it's not good for them. Get it out of there. If your housemates really do care about you, and I hope you're not living with people that don't, they will understand what your strategy is and why having those foods clear and obvious in visible places is too much of a temptation for you. So get it out of the house. Maybe you want to keep their junk food in a bin out in the garage, just so you're not seeing it all the time, so it's not so tempting. If you open up the cupboard door, boom, there's a package of Chips Ahoy looking right at you at eye level. It's going to take a lot of willpower to avoid those. I do not like Chips Ahoy, but if that was what I saw when I opened up the cupboard, yeah, I would have one once in a while. Don't make it easy. Get the junk food out of sight, and it will be out of mind. Keep it out of reach. Do whatever you can to keep it difficult to access. Number 4, have support. It is so important that the people around you support you in your time of need, that support you in your goal for better health and fitness. If they really care about you, and, once again, why would you hang out with people that don't? If they care about you, they will back you up. In other words, they're not going to bring you treats all the time, just to say I love you. They're not going to insist that you share this plate of nachos with them if they really care about you. They are going to do what you ask them to do. So please tell them how they can support you by just not offering the stuff to you, maybe not eating it around you, maybe not giving you a hard time about eating salad instead of a plate of nachos. Tell them what you need of them. Number 5, monitor yourself. A scale is a very handy and easy to use device to monitor your body weight. It's not the best judge of your progress, but it is one tool that you can use. Another tool I recommend is to measure your abdominal circumference regularly. Wrap a soft measuring tape, like a cloth tape that tailors would use, around your abdominal area right at the belly button. So use your navel as a guide and hold that tape horizontally all the way across and keep track of that number. I would get a piece of paper hanging on your wall by your scale, and every Monday morning or so, Saturday morning, Wednesday morning, whichever works best for you, that you can be consistent. Measure yourself, your body circumference, at least in your abdominal region, and also your body weight. Those together will help you see whether you're gaining fat, gaining muscle, losing muscle, or maybe losing fat and gaining muscle, which is really the best thing. And I'd like to emphasize that body weight alone should not be your goal, because that does not really give you the whole picture. It tells you that your body weighs less or more. You could hold a water bottle full of water and you would weigh a certain amount, and while you're standing on the scale, you can drop that bottle and hey, guess what? You just lost weight. And is that meaningful? Absolutely not. But you combine your waist or your abdominal circumference with body weight, and you'll be able to see if you're gaining or losing fat. The reason is because fat will deposit on your abdomen, but those abdominal muscles, no matter how many sit-ups you do, are not going to grow very big. They might get larger than they are now, but really they're not even going to grow an inch. So you can monitor how much fat is depositing on your body separate from the amount of muscle that is growing on your body just by measuring that one region. Number 6, check in with a weight loss coach like me every month or so to get an outside opinion. They will give you tips that will help you improve things you're doing, give you some motivation, and work with you with problem solving so you can live your lifestyle in a way that is satisfying to you, yet not harmful to you. And one last thing, If you listen to this show, please do me a favor and leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. The easiest way to find it is to go to livefitlean.com/iTunes or Stitcher. That's the way that you can repay me and show me that you appreciate this content I'm giving you. I'm not making money off this show. I love doing it, but I also want to know that I'm helping people. And if you leave a review, say a few things, you can leave some stars, you can say what you like, what you don't like. That will not only show me what I can do to make it better or what I'm doing right, but that'll also show other people why this show is valuable to them. All right. Without further ado, let's hear from my guest, Steve Mukensnabl. All right. Hello, everybody. I have Steve Mukensnabl from Horizon Sports on the line with me, and you might remember him from episode 47 when I interviewed he and his other two business partners, the trifecta of fitness from Horizon Sports. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Glenn. Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's wonderful to hear from you, too. I can't wait to talk to you some more. If I remember right, you are the nutrition expert?
We all kind of have expertise in all different areas there, but I tend to gravitate towards working with the athletes on their nutrition programs, yes.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. And first, before we get into that, would you give us a brief bio just for anybody who hasn't heard episode 47 yet? Who are you and what makes you the expert in what you do here?
Well, I'm Steve Mukensnabl and one of the three founders of Horizon Sports and Fitness. And like my other partners, I specialize in corrective and performance exercise. But I've also had some additional training in nutrition, different coursework, and some kind of outside-of-the-box type courses that I've taken and working with other peers associated with, like the Czech Institute, for example, dealing more with metabolic management, not just counting calories.
What is the Czech Institute, for those that don't know?
Paul Chek created kind of a training program, initially starting a lot with fitness training. He's taught a lot of physical therapists, chiropractors, performance trainers, strength and conditioning trainers. And then more recently, he's kind of gone into the holistic lifestyle model. And so he's got a lot of students that follow that type of program.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. And so how do you use this knowledge to help the athletes or the non-athletes that come to you?
I think the big thing is creating a foundation for the athlete. You can't just focus on fitness. You can't just focus on nutrition or just having a good positive mental attitude. You really have to blend those three areas to develop the athlete, because it's kind of like swimming upstream. If you're just working on fitness but you don't have your nutrition in order, you're not going to have the results that you want.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You do have to have all three legs of that stool, and I say that because I saw your website and you have a picture of a stool
right
on the front. Now, I'm wondering, I know that you guys have clients that are local in the Portland, Oregon area, and I know that you're also very capable of working with people anywhere in the world. What is your preferred method of working with somebody? And does it, well, I guess let me just back up just a little bit. Do you ever work with somebody who just wants nutrition consulting, or is it always as kind of a package part of better improvement or better fitness, whatever you wanna, whatever their other goal might be?
Sure. Because we kind of market as Horizon Sports and Fitness, everybody kind of gravitates and thinks, oh, we only do fitness. But as we get referrals from other athletes and clients and who have family members maybe of an athlete, and they realize that we do nutrition consulting, certainly we do isolate just that component. Again, as they get more advanced through that program, we then steer them towards movement, some type of movement program, whether it's strength and conditioning or whether it's having them just go out and be consistent with a walking program. We try to educate them on how important that component is as well.
So I guess most people don't come to you initially for nutrition then?
Not necessarily. We usually work more with the athletes and the fitness, and then we integrate the nutrition into their programs.
Now, how many of your clients are non-athletes? And I understand that that your philosophy is everybody's an athlete, but let's just say the person who does not have a sport or some sort of physical endeavor to accomplish. They don't ever plan to compete against anybody in anything physical. They just want to improve their health and fitness. What percentage of your clients are of that group?
I would say it's probably a good 50-50 mix.
Wow.
And that would also include kids, because a lot of the kids that we work with, even though, they're playing sports and they may consider themselves an athlete in that sport, for the kids, we really work a lot on developing the movement, the primal movement patterns, and also trying as best we can to educate them on nutrition.
Okay. What is your philosophy on nutrition? Now, there's so many different ones out there. Are you a paleo person? Are you a low-fat person? Are you a Mediterranean? What's your philosophy?
The alphabet soup stuff. So I think people are too worried about targeting specific symptoms, counting calories. They hear that fat's bad, so they eliminate fat. They hear sugar's bad, so they eliminate sugar. And they're not really focusing on the big picture, which is what physical state are we in? Are we in a sympathetic state or a parasympathetic state?
Right. Now, I know we both know what those nervous systems are, but would you mind elaborating for the people that aren't physiologists?
Well, I'm not either, so I'm not going to even try to be like a doctor and explain all that. I really try to simplify it for the client, because we can use all these terms, but they just need to look at it and say, hey, I'm going to be in one or two states, a stressed state or a calm and relaxed state. And that stress could be physiological, it could be induced by overtraining, or it could be emotional. I'm having trouble at work or with a spouse or something, and I'm in that stress state. That stress state is a survival mode, and it's only meant for short-term survival.
And that would be the sympathetic nervous system is fired. That's your fight or flight system, and it's kind of a misnomer because I don't see a lot of sympathy with it. It's it's fight or flight. I mean, you're either going to kill or be killed or get out of that situation. So it's a bit of a misnomer. So when someone says a sympathetic nervous system, they might kind of lose track of what it is. And then you're about to explain the parasympathetic nervous system. And go ahead.
The parasympathetic, I think of that as like paramedics. They come in and they're here to help repair you and fix you up. And so when you're in that state, your body is in the state of repair. It's breaking down, the nutrients to help with the organs and to help with all the other systems. That's where we want to be most of the time. And what we find, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the other name for that is rest and digest. So fight or flight versus rest and digest. And if using those two terms, I think it's easy for people to understand the nature that the body is currently in at that moment. So go ahead. What you were going to say? Well,
and we'll use your term rest and digest. It's interesting how you get, we have everybody fill out a health appraisal questionnaire. And one of the huge things that we see is digestion. A lot of issues with the gut that's going on. And, of course, people go to what they're eating. And, yeah, that certainly can have an effect, but let's think about the fight or flight. When you're in that sympathetic state, digestion is not one of the functions that the body worries about.
Nope, not at all.
So that's inhibited. So rather than going to food all the time, take a look at what state you're in. Are you overstressed? Are you stressed when you're eating? Because you're not going to digest the things that you're eating anyway, even if they're perfect. So the big picture is for clients or for anybody to understand how to get out of those chronic states of stress or how to not self-induce those chronic states of stress.
Well, walk me through this, if you will. I'm having trouble painting a clear picture on how a person would eat if they're in their sympathetic nervous system, or if they're in either of these, and then also maybe explain how they would know. So how would you walk somebody through that?
Okay. First of all, we got to find out why they're in that sympathetic state. If good nutrition cannot trump emotional issues, emotional stress. If you are eating a perfect diet, you're not going to be able to overcome a constant state of stress that you put yourself in, whether it's at work. You wake up in the morning, you're running late, and so you're getting dressed real quick, and you have adrenaline you're going through your system. It doesn't matter if you eat a perfect breakfast; you're still in that stress state.
True.
And if you're driving down the road and somebody's cutting you off, you're going to be in that stress state. So too many people think that they can overcome other bad habits just by eating right. And it's not. You're only working on one leg of the stool. You have the other areas you got to work on.
True.
So that would be the one thing I would go to is evaluate the other parts of your life that are forcing that stress state. Now, as far as nutrition, we can induce stress by nutrition or not eating correctly. Obviously, you eat toxic foods, you're going to induce a stress state. Your body's going to react. It's going to become inflamed.
Mm-hmm.
You can also eat good foods, but in the wrong combinations that would induce a stressed state. And we always think of stress as kind of an emotional thing, but if your body uses sugar as its primary source of energy, but you're not giving it enough sugar, and when I say sugar, I'm talking, fruits and vegetables.
You mean
enough?
Are you referring to carbohydrates in general or simply simple carbs?
No, mainly fruits and vegetables. I like to refer to those as my sugars. Starches, breads, pastas, those kind of things are pretty detrimental to us, and I don't like to they are carbs, but I don't like to put them in the category of part of our nutrition program. Does that make sense?
You don't recommend people eat grains? Is that pretty much what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm not big on grains. Those are dietary inhibitors. We don't digest very well with the grains.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that when we get people off of those, we find that they have a lot less problems with their guts.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of that going around.
Oh, yeah. And again, when we do our health appraisal questionnaires, we can see all of these items. And, and a doctor might go in and say, okay, I'm going to give you an antacid for this. I'm going to give you a anti-inflammatory for this. But I look at it and go, okay, how can we change the foundation and see some of those symptoms go away?
Right.
At least, if nothing else, we eliminate nutrition as the issue that's causing these symptoms. So then when a doctor does his evaluation, he's getting a true picture of what could be wrong rather than just a systemic inflammation.
Exactly. Find the cause. If at least eliminate what the cause could be. Yeah.
Now, if I go back to that point I was making as far as how do we induce nutritional stress, if we're not getting fruits and vegetables in the morning, let's say we wake up in the morning and we go out and we get some eggs from the chicken coop and we crack the eggs and cook them up and we eat them and we go, hey, perfect, we got great protein. Your body doesn't have any sugars at that point. It's got a very dense, pure protein, and it says, hey, I need sugars to survive, so I'm going to make my own. And I'm going to get a flood of chemicals through my body that will help break down the protein I just ate and some fat to create the sugars that I need. Well, you've just induced a stress state.
This reminds me of Body for Life. They, in this book that came out, 20 years ago or so, the author, I'm losing his name at the moment, suggested that you should wake up in the morning without eating a thing and do your exercise and then consume a protein shake after that and then eat a certain lunch and a certain dinner that were very nutritionally balanced and healthy. So I didn't have a problem with that. But I've always had a problem with that, waking up and exercising on an empty stomach.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say if you've just fasted for, a good 8 hours, 10 hours, depending on when you went to bed, your body needs nutrition. And if you go out and start exercising, then you are going to induce that stress state. You probably burn through your storage of sugar throughout the night.
Right.
And so then you start the morning. Many people that we work with that you can tell are already dealing with these issues, you can ask them, hey, do you sleep well at night? Oh, no. When do you wake up? Sometime between 2 and 3? Yeah, how'd you know? Well, that's about the time that we burn through our stores of sugar if we're not storing it very well, if we're in these chronic states of stress. And so what we do is we change what they eat at night and throughout the day, but also their nighttime meal, which, of course, everybody says never have, right? But we make sure that they're replenishing some stores of sugar or good carbs so they can get a better sleep through the night.
I've never been an advocate of no eating after a certain time. I mean, it's true that you should feed for the future, but at the same time, when you're sleeping, you do need energy, and that's when your body repairs and rebuilds. So you don't want to go into it on empty stomach or an empty fuel tank.
Yeah. I think, again, we try to manipulate a system that is already pretty good at taking care of itself, and we try to tweak all of these things. But if we eliminate the bad things that we do to it, the bad things that we eat, and if we start to manipulate the stress that we're in throughout the day, we can handle all the imperfections as far as when we eat, if we eat at night, or if we don't eat the right ratios all the time. Our bodies can deal with that much better. But we've got to look at the big picture and deal with the stress and what state is our body in throughout the day.
Yeah, it's funny because when I talk to people about nutrition, I can tell them pretty much all the same things you said about how you need to eat a good balanced diet and be regular and consistent about it. And they say, yeah, but I really like donuts. And there's always that one thing. Everybody has their one thing that they really love, and they're not willing to give it up. And they won't say it outright that they're willing to give up their health for their freedom of eating donuts whenever they want. But that's essentially what's happening. Is like, yeah, but they're so good, and that's what I keep hearing them say.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I took a course one time on, food, the brain, and stress or something from some PhD gal down in Portland.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that she was saying is, hey, when people have these urges, don't tell them not to have it. The important thing is let them have it. Don't make them feel like, hey, they can't have a thing. But what they need to do is evaluate the effects of it when they're done. If they're going to eat the donut, take a little bit of time after you eat and go, do I feel better about it? And start to recognize the cause and effect at that point. Because like you said, some people have these emotional ties to foods, and if you say don't have it, they're just going to resist.
Oh, yeah.
So let them have it. Let them experience the pain and the agony when they eat it, and pretty soon it starts to eat away at their urge to have it over and over and over again.
Yeah, hopefully. It depends on where their priorities are, though.
Yeah, it is. And I would also tend to say, you know what, a donut once in a while isn't going to destroy their nutrition as much as being a stress case all the time.
Well, I tell people who ask me how to get rid of belly fat, I say, well, let's first discuss how you gain belly fat. The perfect way is to eat a donut and stress out about it. Mm-hmm. So adding stress, sugar, and fat is the perfect perfect storm to store belly fat.
That's it. There's different people. I think it might have even been Paul Chek that talked about it, where, or Poliquin, maybe Charles Poliquin talked about, you store fat differently based on the issues that you're dealing with. So if you have cortisol issues and you have a high stress, you might store it in the belly. If you have blood sugar regulation issues, you might store it more in the flank areas. Mm. And if you see people a lot, you see these, what do they call them, muffin tops now?
Oh, yeah,
and you see them as young kids who are fairly athletic. They have these muffin top issues going on.
I have never seen so many plump kids. I'm seeing kids that have the physique of 50-year-olds. They look like they have a young face and they're a little bit smaller and they still have the movements of a young person, but their physique looks like a 50-year-old lawyer.
Yeah. It's epidemic. It really is epidemic, and it's kind of sad to see. We when we do our athlete development and our movement programs, not only is that an issue, but their ability to move, to take a 12-year-old kid, 11-year-old kid, and to see that they can't even squat, and they're young.
Holy cow!
They should be able to do a squat, and they just can't do them.
They should be able to do a lot of things.
Oh yeah. But it's lifestyle, and of course for them it's nutrition. Stress is not such a big deal for them. So I look at those guys and go, it's directly attributed to what they eat and their lack of activity, the lack of the things that they do.
Now, I want to go back to what you were saying early on when you were talking about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, or the stress and the rest state of being. And you said a person needs to eat according to that. Now, how would you eat if you're currently in a state of stress? You've got a big project at work, your boss is down your back, there's financial problems at home, whatever, and you didn't sleep well last night. So how would I eat today if that was my situation?
Well, probably the best thing to deal with it immediately. I mean, there's obviously lifestyle changes and things that you need to evaluate, but if you want to eat and you need to eat, at least sit down, take a few minutes, and just do some deep breathing, because that's the quickest way to change the chemical state within your body to parasympathetic from sympathetic.
Right, and that's a perfect way to trigger the vagus nerve, which is the nerve that's involved in the parasympathetic nervous system, which will slow down your heart and your respiration and kind of speed up your digestive processes too. So there's a physiological benefit to that, as well as increasing the oxygen supply to your body.
Exactly.
So you're not talking about eating a different diet on the days you're stressed versus the days you're not, are you?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not going to change.
Gotcha.
No, not at all. Now, what I was saying, like I was using the egg as an example, you do need to make sure that you have a balanced diet with a reasonable combination of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Because if you don't have enough of one or the other, then you could theoretically induce that stress state.
Well, I have been a fan of that exact philosophy since 1997 when I read The Zone. And one of the first guests I had on my podcast was Dr. Barry Sears, because I have been a fan of this 40% of your calories coming from carbs, 30 from protein, and 30 from fat. Ever since that time, I'm sensitive to blood sugar fluctuations. And so when I read this book, not with the desire to lose weight, but just basically out of curiosity, and then what he was saying about hormonal control of your insulin and glucagon and balancing the blood sugar, I thought I might as well give it a shot. And so I did for 1 week, and I have never felt better in my life. I felt so stable, not really famishingly hungry, not cravings and urges, and once you eat balanced, then your body can pretty much run on its own at maximum efficiency. So do you have a certain ratio, or how do you present that to your people?
What I do is I'm pretty close to where you're at, but as a starting point, I say try to make half of your meal carbs. So if you're looking at a pie chart, half of it's good carbs, fruits and vegetables, more fruits and vegetables, and then I go about 30% fats, and then the rest proteins. From there, then we assess how that's working for each individual. And the way we do that is we use temperature and heart rate. So people will eat their meal, and then about 20 minutes after, we'll have them check their temperature and heart rate. And that will help indicate whether their metabolism is up, or if it didn't support their metabolism, we'll see a drop in temperature.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of our dial to see how people are doing. Many people, when you know that they're already nutritionally insufficient and having issues, you'll ask them, hey, do you know your temperature? No, I don't know, but boy, it's always low. Well, they're hypometabolic. Their metabolism is already shutting down because of the chronic stress state.
So what would you have them do in that case?
We would manipulate the ratios. A lot of times I increase a lot of the fruits to help get that metabolism up, but it's not necessarily something that's going to happen right at that moment, especially someone just starting the nutrition program, because they may have taken years to teach their body to quickly go into the sympathetic state.
Right.
It's used to fight and flight, so they feel just a little bit hungry, boom, they're in a sympathetic state. So it takes a long time eating correctly and communicating to your body, hey, you're not going to starve. If it's every 2 hours, you have to have a snack in order to make that link to your body to say, hey, you can stay in the parasympathetic state. Sometimes we have to have clients do that.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And that's something that I try to get across to people when they say they want to lose weight, and then after, a month, they're really frustrated that they're not, and convincing them that it's because they've been living a certain way for 10, 20 years or more, they're not going to be able to change everything just like that.
No, no. And the worst thing to do is to suddenly say, okay, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to lose as much. I'm going to eat minimal, and I'm going to exercise as much as I can. Well, you're just forcing that sympathetic state again.
And I think it's on the same lines there. But you said waking up and eating a breakfast of simply protein and fat without carbohydrates puts your body into a stress state. Correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Because you're probably already depleted of your sugars.
So what do you say to the people that are eating paleo or Atkins? Is that and they are losing fat, and the thought process is if you're not giving your body carbs, then it has to break the fat down to turn it into glucose.
Yep, and you will lose weight. We can drop people's weight quickly. It'll be a combination of fat and certainly protein, because we are reducing the amount of carbohydrates that they're using. So the body is going into that survival mode. But they do that at the cost of their metabolism. So and they can't stay in that mode forever. I mean, even the Atkins diet says, hey, you got to reintroduce these things later.
Right.
But their metabolism is real slow. If you take their temperatures are probably going to be pretty low. So they're not training their body to utilize the fuels correctly.
Right. And what I have experienced both from reading Dr. Sears' work and my own experimentation on myself is that I never feel better after a meal than when it is properly balanced in, the zone is 40-30-30 and you're a 50-25-25, I presume. But anywhere close to a carbs of 40% when I eat, not over the course of the day, but at that moment, I just feel great. I have a good amount of energy, but I don't crash. And when I do get hungry, it's not a famished and I have to eat now or I'm going to punch you in the face type thing. It's I could eat. Let's start working that way. But I have a level head and I'm able to plan a healthy meal rather than I need to get something in me now. Give me that bag of chips.
Exactly. Yeah. And if there was one thing I would tell people, that if they're looking at, they have to look at all areas of their life, but when they start to look at nutrition, the first thing they need to do is start logging what they eat. Because we think that, we have a big portion of vegetables on our plate. Maybe the portion takes up half the plate, but it's not as dense as some of the other things. So it's not really 50% or 40% of the calories that you're eating.
No.
So you really have to log once in a while to understand those proportions.
Yeah, size doesn't matter because oil, of course, is very dense and very high in calories. So if you were to have a cup of oil and a cup of broccoli, it's not anywhere close to the same calories.
Right. Yeah, so if people just did that to start, then they would probably realize, I'm not getting enough fruits and vegetables.
Right.
Or I'm getting way too much protein or way too much fat. And then once they start to do that, then take a look at the sources of their food and make sure, okay, now I want to get as high quality of these sources that I can. Sometimes people, they get too radical on their source and then they don't eat enough. They go, I'm not going to touch that because, it's not perfect food for me, so I'm not going to eat it. Well, I tell some people you can do that, but if you don't eat, then what state have you just created? Now you're back in a stress state because you're starving and you've defeated the purpose. So sometimes you're better off eating something that's not perfect and getting those calories and communicating to your body, hey, you're not in the starvation mode yet.
People are very drawn to the extremes. When they are not happy with their body, they want to look for an extreme answer and follow this diet or that diet or this workout program or the other. And it sounds to me like you're going back to the basics, eat a balanced meal.
You go back to the farm. Look how they ate years ago.
Yeah.
And they did pretty good back then. Unfortunately, a cow is not a cow anymore. The way they feed the cows and so forth. So you can't just say, hey, they ate cows in the old days and so they're healthy. Well, you've got to be particular about where you get those things.
Do you condone or advocate meat eating? And if so, all kinds of meats, or what's your scope there?
Yeah, carnivores are good. we need the muscle and the animal proteins to develop correctly. Our bodies just need that. For those, and again, I think it all starts when people say, okay, red meat is bad, but they don't go, well, why is it bad? Well, are the cows being fed things that are toxic to the cows and help make them fat, and then we eat it and we have bad responses? They just say, okay, don't eat cows, don't eat red meat. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people got away from those proteins, and then they start eating, nuts and beans and these type of things to get protein, and those can be counterproductive to our digestive system as well. So, like you said, they go to extremes.
That's true, and in fact, vegans, and I hesitate to say this because I'm sure there's going to be a backlash, but I halfway jokingly say vegans have disordered eating.
Sure.
Because
my partner, Bob, you interviewed him.
Uh-huh.
He was a vegetarian for years and years. And, he does a lot of heavy lifting. He's 70 years old, but he's still out there doing deadlifts and squats and all that. And he was complaining to a nutritionist one time saying, hey, I can't, I'm plateauing. I can't get anywhere. Well, the nutritionist convinced him to start eating some muscle proteins again, or animal proteins.
Right.
And immediately his lifts went up 25, 30%.
Wow. That happened to a friend of mine, too. She would eat meat, but not mammal. But yet she was becoming anemic because of that very thing. And so she was having trouble performing, and a doctor convinced her to go ahead and eat some, and she did, and almost instantly she felt great. And she ran outside and picked up her house after eating a steak. It was tremendous.
Yeah, if we could just kind of touch into our intuition better and kind of eat by what comes naturally instead of having all these emotions and all the media and propaganda influence what we do, we'd be way better off.
Yeah, emotions is the biggest thing, especially with women now. I don't know if you heard my podcast with Dr. Ed Abramson. He's a psychologist, but he's also an author who's written a few books about emotional eating. And in the interview, I asked him how many people are emotional eaters, or they eat primarily emotionally versus with nutrition in mind. And he said, as far as women go, pretty much 100% of women eat solely for emotional reasons. And for men, he said it's closer to 50%. So
wow.
I find that terribly troubling and sad, and I hope that doesn't continue.
Yeah, it is, and that's those people we send over to Naim to have a little talk on what their real motivations or issues are. Yeah,
I agree. They definitely need to put their emotions somewhere else, or feed their emotions in different ways besides chocolate and ice cream and potato chips or whatever it might be.
Yeah, even just to realize that that's what they're doing, is a big step forward. Because some of them would just deny that that's the issue. Some don't acknowledge that, I'm covering up some other issue that I might have.
Well, I was speaking with some people at one time, and I was in this office environment, and I was talking with one person, and she was saying that she doesn't eat emotionally. And then this other guy says, no, I don't eat emotionally either. I mean, I'll have food at a party and, just celebration and things like that. And I'm just kind of looking and laughing because they're talking about all these emotional eating scenarios, and yet they're saying they're not emotional eaters. And so
exactly.
I thought they were kidding. And it turned out that they were serious. They thought emotional eating only meant depression eating, and they didn't realize that happy is an emotion, and celebration is an emotion, and all those things too. So if you break it down, if you're eating for any reason other than nutrition, then you're an emotional eater. And when, I talk to somebody and say, these are the things you should eat, these are the things you should avoid and, keep limited, they say, oh, yeah, like I said with the donuts, the donuts are so good, donuts are good. And I say, no, donuts taste good. They are not good.
Right.
And trying to get across to them that that's emotion speaking, and you can feed your emotion in other ways.
But Glenn, it's a homemade donut, so it's good for you now, right?
it's whole wheat. Yeah, it's a whole wheat donut. Well,
exactly.
All right, give me that multivitamin with that cigarette and call it good.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, Steve, It's been a pleasure speaking with you. You're a wealth of knowledge. I know that the listeners are going to get a lot out of this, and I'll have some information on the show notes page where they can reach you and get in touch with you more if they want to learn more about what you have to say. So I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to us all.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That was Steve Mukensnabl of Horizon Sports. That is the conclusion of my series of 4 separate interviews with the guys of Horizon Sports. If you recall from episode 47, I talked with all of them to get an overview of their online and brick and mortar business. Then I had an interview with Bob, Naim, and now Steve. So that's going to wrap up that. I really love talking with people like Steve and Bob, Naim, because we all do pretty much the same thing. We're in the trenches working with clients every day, trying to help them become more fit, more capable, more able to do things, to move around, to be healthier, and quite often to lose body fat. And we have slightly different takes on it. So every one of those guys has slightly different methods and approaches than I do, which is perfectly fine. We're all individuals. We have different experiences. We have different educations, and each one of our clients is a little bit different than the other. So we are gathering kind of different approaches, and I really love talking to these guys. I fully back everything they do and how they do it. I wouldn't have them on the show if I didn't. But at the same time, they're not me. So some people relate better with me. Some people relate better with them. So that's cool. I want you guys to come back for episode 51. In 2 weeks, I'm going to have Vince Blaney. He's a physical therapist, and he's actually going to do something that's pretty amazing. He's going to come on the show, and he's going to tell us how to not see him. In other words, a lot of times people get all fired up to exercise and lose weight, and they go out and they start running or doing other forms of exercise, and bam, what happens? They hurt themselves. Then they go in and they see a physical therapist, much like Vince Blaney, and he's going to tell us what some of those most common injuries are and how you can prevent them, because he, like me, wants you to get fit and healthy for life. We want you to do well. We want you to not just get off that couch and run, but we want you to do it safely and healthfully and over the long term, not just for the next 6 months so you can fit into that wedding dress. So he's going to be on episode 51 in about 2 weeks. If you have not already done so, please subscribe to this show. You can also leave a review or just give a couple of stars by going to livefitlean.com/iTunes or /Stitcher. It would really mean a lot to me. It will really mean a lot to the show because that's what makes the show get noticed. The more reviews and the more ratings it has, the higher up it goes, and then new people can find the show. So anyways, I really appreciate you doing that. It all helps. Once again, it is a pleasure speaking with you. I look forward to my next episode. Take care.